Moving on to 6C, which is an 8-mark question. Let's get right on with this. So with reference to the information provided, so it hasn't given us any specific extract here, examine the likely numerical value of the cross-elasticity of demand between the UK online streaming services. So what is cross-elasticity of demand? Cross-elasticity of demand is, of course, XED. And XCD is, of course, percentage change in quantity demanded of good A divided by percentage change in price of good B. And what does that mean? It's how much quantity demanded changes of one good in response to a change in the price of another good. Now, this question's been very general. It's saying with reference to all the extracts, basically. So with reference to the information provided. But like I always say, with these, with section B and these extract questions, a lot of the time, the answer is actually quite simple, and you should be able to just know it from your own knowledge, maybe from your own economics theory, but just your own experience living in the real world. And if you recall for this 8-mark question, you have 6 KA marks, so 2K, 2 application, 2 analysis, and then you have 2 valuation marks. So that will pick you up at least one of the knowledge marks. But now let's actually answer the question. So what is the likely XCD value between these streaming services, so between like Netflix, Disney Plus? I always say this, but a lot of these section B questions, you can answer them just with your own knowledge you have in your brain, basically, with your own economics theory, with your own just reading the news, application, just your own real world understanding. Let's think about this. So XCD value, this again, it relies a bit on your content knowledge. What are the two things that it can be? So your XCD value either tells you pretty much if it's a complement versus if it's a substitute. Now, if we think, are these substitutes or they complements? It's a very simple answer. People will subscribe to Disney Plus instead of Netflix. Why? Because Disney Plus might have some shows that Netflix doesn't, or they might like Disney Plus more. They both offer the same thing, thus they are substitutes. And now this relies on your content knowledge. If they are substitutes, what is that XCD value going to be? What is the numerical XCD value going to be? And if they are substitutes, the numerical XCD value is going to be greater than 0. And now, even without looking at the extracts, that is some very simple knowledge that you should be able to drive straight from the question, just from using your own knowledge. And again, it all relies on that backbone of having a solid foundation of content knowledge. So the way I do this 8-mark question, 2K marks, secure them straight away, this formula, and then your other one would just be explaining what XCD actually means. So it measures the change in quantity demanded in response to a change in price of good B. So change in quantity demanded of good A compared to, in response to a change in the price of good B. Then your application marks. How are you going to pick up these application marks? Now this is where, of course, for your section B, you will have to use your extract. So let's just have a scan through the extracts. This is probably not going to be very relevant for this. Economics of price discrimination, probably not going to be very relevant. This is probably it, but for this question, basically, we look for a stat or a figure. So, of course, we have quite a few here. And yeah, so this is talking about market share. And how can we use this to prove their substitutes? So we can use this to prove their substitutes if market share of one increases or decreases. So if the market share of Netflix decreased and by like 1%, and then the market share of Disney increased by 1% in that same time period, that shows consumers are moving from Netflix to Disney Plus, thus they're substitutes. So if we find any sort of close relation like that, that'll be a great bit of application. So even straight away, if we look at Netflix and Disney Plus, Netflix lost about 4.5% of market share, and what happened in that same time period for Disney? Disney gained 1.7% of market share. And there's many examples. I'm sure there's better example here. So 5.5% Netflix lost, Disney gained around 2.3%. So yeah, they're definitely substitutes. As I said, when one loses, the other one gains. And if you remember back to the previous questions, we looked through this extract, and this mentions a bit of, it proves why they're substitutes. So here it talks about declining satisfaction, declining value for money for Netflix, and then here it talks about Disney, higher satisfaction rates, rankings, then Netflix across shows, more original content. So just yet again, any one of those, and this is the main stat I would use, by the way, for this question, to pick up those 2 application marks. Just show when Disney Plus's market share is increased, when Netflix market share is decreasing, we see an increase in Disney's market share. So it shows consumers are moving from Netflix to Disney Plus. And that would be my 2 application marks, just like I said, adding those stats and figures. How would we get those 2 analysis marks then? It's just explaining what substitutes are, using the application we've just given and explaining what that means, basically. That when consumers go away from Netflix, they go towards Disney Plus. And you can even use that extract. So you can talk about how demand changes. As consumers are not as satisfied with Netflix, therefore thus decrease the quantity demanded on Netflix. And since Disney Plus provides a better service, better value in the eyes of consumers increase the quantity demanded of Disney Plus, thus it does show that substitute relationship. And that's literally how simple the 8-mark question is. Of course, we still need to go through evaluation, but 6 KA marks, so easy, and you can be so time efficient with this as well. So you need to, it's just a banker. It's the bank question where you need to bank it. You need to make sure you're getting 8 out of 8 on this question. So with evaluation here, it's 2 marks. Just be simple, straightforward, not much development needed here. First one that comes to our mind is just another content knowledge point. Like I say, content knowledge mastery is key. This is why I emphasize so much in my live classes. But how am I picking up these 2 marks? So a really good point is it depends on the XCD value itself. Yes, we've proven that the XCD value is greater than 0, but again, content knowledge is key here. There's degrees of the substitutes as well. For example, if the XCD value is 0.2, what does this indicate? This indicates they are weak substitutes. Whereas if the XCD value is something like 0.8 or like 0.7, whatever you want to call it, they are stronger substitutes. So however in evaluation, this depends on the value of the XCD, as although they are substitutes, it depends whether they're weak or strong substitutes. And what I would actually do, just to add that little icing on the cake, is when we talked about the differences in the market share. So we said, for example here, where Netflix fell 4.5%, but Disney did not gain 1.7%. It indicates that they are actually quite weak substitutes rather than strong substitutes. So it indicates a lower XCD value maybe. And that's a really, really good evaluation point. And it's a lot more than you need for 2 marks, but you can pretty much write that down in a minute as well. And like I said, strong content knowledge, knowing how to evaluate, bing bang bosh, that is 8 out of 8 marks, boxed.